Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Andre, almost 5 million cybersecurity jobs are sitting empty right now, and the attackers targeting these businesses really don't care. So that's going to be what we talk about mostly on the show today. Welcome to Security Squawk. I'm Bryan, joined by Reginald and Andre. Unfortunately, out this week, so it's just going to be the two of us.
Three was a crowd, so it's us two.
Just means you get twice as much as Andre today. So consider yourself warned. All right. All right, Andre, here we go. So we got a packed show today. I got to hit the cough button. Can you fill in for me real quick?
Yeah. So I coughed as well while you were coughing. But before we get started, thank you everyone for watching. Please like and share the show. And if you have maybe an IT director, IT manager, or even a CEO, and we're pushing some buttons of conversations that you guys may have talked about, please go ahead and share the show. And we also have a buy me a coffee link. We never bring on vendors to advertise. So please buy us a coffee because our cup is literally empty, as you can see in my picture right here.
It's not empty, but we appreciate the support any way we can get it here, folks. And buying me a coffee is one of those ways. So, Andre, big word this week that I kept coming across as we were prepping for the show, and that's that word assumed. And it's going to come up a lot today based on what we're talking about and why small and mid-sized businesses are losing the war for not only just cybersecurity talent, but just cybersecurity in general, and what these companies need to actually start doing or needing to do about it. And it's like what we're going to talk about today is probably not what most people are thinking about, right? So, and then we're going to jump into a topic about what I think is kind of one of the most dangerous false sense of security in IT. And that's thinking that your backups will save you when they've never been tested. So we got two stories. Both are about the gap between believing that you're protected and actually being protected. And we're going to get into that and start to talk about what it actually means as a business to sit there and say you're actually protected, right? Because we hear it all the time, right? I'm sure your businesses calls lots of companies to try to get new business or to try to have a conversation about their cybersecurity. And I would say the number one thing that we hear is we're fine, right? We're good. We have it covered, right? But the data tells us things are not fine. Is that what you kind of see out there, Andre, as well?
Yeah, because it's kind of hard to justify fine until something happens. So when everything is working, our IT guy, our IT company is doing a great job, but you typically don't know they're not doing a great job is when you need that backup, when you're trying to reach them at 2 a.m. because there's ransomware or something like that. And that's typically when clients then make a decision to say, you know what, we got to fire this company or department or whatever it is, because we just realized they haven't been doing their job.
Yeah. And, we're looking at a bunch of different data points here for the show today. And there's a study that came out end of last year from ISC2. And they're basically saying 61% of mid-sized businesses, companies between 50 and 500 employees, because we can define mid-sized businesses however we want these days, it seems. But companies between 50 and 500, Andre, would you be surprised if I told you that they have 0 dedicated cybersecurity staff on payroll?
We've been doing this episode for about this podcast for about 4 or 5 years. So no, I am not surprised.
Yeah. So, 500 people you would think you'd have at least maybe one dedicated person out of those 500 looking at your cybersecurity. You know, and you know, and it's funny because the next thing I'm going to roll into is the thing that I think a lot of these businesses went to, right? And it's not that these businesses don't want help. They do, because CrowdStrike found that 70% of SMBs already rely on outside experts just to make security buying decision, right? So they're going to third parties to find out like what they should buy, right? So they don't even have someone internal who knows enough to pick the right tools and make sure that they're being steered in the right direction, that they're not being ripped off, that they're, I mean, you take the story I did last week with the guys that were basically writing their own check with these ransomware negotiations, right? You can't trust anybody, right? I hate to say it, but you really need to like have, whether you develop a relationship with a third party, right? So like if I'm a business owner, right, and I'm faced with, man, I just heard this podcast and these guys said I need to have somebody like in my team, on my company, who I trust, who's not going to steer me in the wrong direction, right? A lot of companies will go, well, we can't hire that person. You can't. You're right. They're expensive and they don't even exist, because that's what the data tells us. So you got to go to a third party, right? So what does that look like for a business? And this is how most businesses don't do it. And this is why they're in the predicament they're in, Andre. And I'll be one of the first people to say it. Like, you should hire a third party, you know, fractional type person to come in and advise you, but that person should not deliver 1 ounce of service or buy one product for you and make a profit from it, right? So they're completely independent from what is happening with the IT operations of your business, and they are just helping you make decisions. They're your trusted expert, and they have no skin in the game, or they can't be compromised in any way by a vendor or by somebody who's trying to just get them to push their product or their service, or, you know how the business works, Andre, other people selling their solution through you, where now you're telling the customer, oh, you got to do this, right?
Yeah.
All the time. And I think that needs to be a thing that businesses start to establish. Like, who is our independent advisor who has no skin in the game and is always just going to shoot straight with us and tell us what we should be doing from a practical best practices, this is how you should do it standpoint, not this is who I'm making the most money off of, or who I'm enticed to sell for this quarter because they're giving me some bonus at the end of the quarter. There's all kinds of games being played out there as to why you have certain security solutions or certain software in your business. And that's the reality. So businesses need to change how they're doing this, or they're going to find themselves in this predicament where they're constantly being sold to by the guy that they supposedly trust to give them this advice, right? So that internal knowledge can be an outside party, but they can't have they can't be compromised in any way, and they can't have any conflicts of interest in what they're giving you for advice. Agree with that approach?
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, I don't think there's enough demand for that consultant to just, because our model that we do in the sense is reoccurring. We're getting the checks every first of the month, where this guy who's coming in to either do consulting, penetration testing, for the most part, they're only getting paid that one time and then have to wait another 1 year or 2 years for the client to, hire them again. So I think that's kind of where they're kind of drooling in the mouth, in the sense of like, yeah, I just did this job for you to show you all of your needs and gaps, but I would really love that recurring money that you're spending right now.
Yeah, it really is a shift in the mindset of the buyer that you have. I kind of, when I say that, right, the first thing that comes to mind is, I don't know what it's like in Florida, right? But in New Jersey, it's crazy. There literally, you could draw a line in the state as to exactly where this phenomena occurs, right? And what I'm talking about is purchasing real estate, right? I can draw a line in the state of New Jersey, and anybody above that line, north of that line, I guarantee you will have a lawyer with them when it comes to a real estate transaction. Anything below that line, I guarantee you they more than likely will not have a lawyer representing them as part of a real estate transaction. Right. So it literally is that mind shift. And like, we need to have this independent third party person. And why do you think that is? Like, why do you think like North Jersey people in my state feel like they need to have an attorney present, while South Jersey people are totally like, yeah, I'm going to go about this on my own. I don't need to waste my money on an attorney.
Being cheap and maturity level.
Really, it's just because that's how it is up there, and that's how it always has been done. But I'm just going to say this. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a lot of, I would say less so now than in the past, but I would say in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of shady real estate things happening. And it was in your best interest to make sure you had an attorney if you were buying real estate up in North Jersey, right? So that's as deep as I'm going to go on that as far as that goes. But in my mind, it's the same idea, right? It's going to be so many companies that are getting burned by, their IT guy, right? Who's responsible for everything, managing laptops, printers, email, help desk tickets. And now you're also going to make that person responsible for making sure your network is not compromised or not being compromised in any way. To me, the way companies are doing it with one person and knowing how to run a proper security program, that person is being set up to fail. And we're seeing it over and over and over again in these companies, right? All the way up to 500 employees. So it's not like it's just like these mom and pops that have like 5, 10, few employees. It's companies that have 500 employees and below that are guilty of this practice of doing it this way. Any other thoughts on maybe what works, Andre, or what could work besides kind of what I'm laying out here for businesses? Like, how do they get, that uncompromised advice from who they need to get it from?
It's a hard line because also the incumbent, the IT provider, he also doesn't want someone coming in to point out all the bad stuff or lack of things that they're doing. So it's that fine line of also even that person saying, hey, yeah, you should bring in somebody, because they don't want someone in that, they don't want that person in the hen house, so to speak. For me, it's just going to be a mind shift change, but I just like the end user always thinks, if I'm paying you all of this money already, why do I now have to pay someone else to make sure that you're doing your job? And I think until that mindset shifts, it's going to be a hard sell to add more money to the budget to verify what you're paying someone else to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like 20, 30 years in the technology, right? And we've always done it this way because we could, right? Because we could get away with it. People got away with it for 30 years of just hiring one guy and letting him run the whole entire thing, right? Those days are gone, right? And I think like what businesses are failing to understand is they're long gone, right? And everybody's going to be kind of looking around, like trying to figure out like how they're going to do this. And again, it's going to be one of those things that the business, unfortunately, is going to have to go, well, looks like we got to spend more money on this. And Andre, you and I have been saying for years that
right.
businesses don't spend enough money on this. And read between the lines, like what we've been saying on the show. It's not the tools. It's never the tools, right? So we're not telling you to go out and spend more money on more tools. It's investing in things like this, right? A proper cybersecurity program that's structured. Like, Andre, I run a lot of compliance programs for a lot of companies. Well, I'm going to tell you, one of the biggest things in those frameworks is separation of duties. It is impossible for you, to any business out there, for you to comply with separation of duties with one person on your staff, with two people on your staff. Like, you can't separate things enough from those one or two people, right? So the answer is, well, we can't afford more employees. Well, okay, you can't do it with employees then. And I think that's the thing that a lot of small businesses don't get or don't understand is, if you don't have a solid relationship with somebody outside of your company who can advise you on this stuff, you're so far behind the times, it's not even funny.
Yeah. And in our world, we typically just see the CFO come in and try to do that, but then they don't even understand the technology. So it's a hard sell. Again, if a client is paying me 10 grand and now I tell them they have to pay a consultant 3,000 to now make sure I'm doing my job, that's how they look at it. But they, for me, it's a hard sell.
I agree with you. I mean, it's always going to be a hard sell in terms of businesses trying to move it, and spend it. But are we at the point where the realization needs to be there? That's
in the accounting world, I'm sure separations of duties happen when, the accounts payable was stealing money and, because they were also accounts receivable and they were changing bank accounts information. So I don't know what it's going to take on the cyber side, because I think on our side, it's just heads roll. Oh, this guy wasn't doing a good job because he wasn't checking the backups. Let's hire this company because on their website, they say they check their backups. Like, that's like how the client reacts to this stuff.
And it's unfortunate, because we're just going to see more and more of this as this moves along. And Andre, why don't you tell me I had the wrong one up there? There we go.
Oh,
so the whole thing with this 4.8 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs, right? Where do you? I just want to kind of, because this is the big one that stuck out for me when I'm looking at all the data that we're looking at. Are these fake jobs to you? There's 61% of them are unfilled. Is there a wage gap? Is there a we want this an experience gap, but like, because you don't have it, we're not even talking to you? What do you where's the gap here? Because we have these jobs unfilled, but we have companies that are running around with their ass flapping in the wind.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an education aspect, because you get someone just, coming out of a 2-year community college program, even if it's a 4-year, they don't have the skill set to do the cybersecurity job. They're typically going to start off in help desk or specialized project. But I also think it's a little play on the words of unfilled. Hey, we have this position, it's unfilled, but we really don't want to pay it, because we're going to try to do the best we can do with the 7 guys we have now on the team. Because we know our industry, people are looking for jobs left and right. So
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, just for us to get, we always talk about even to get a good level 2 guy, a level 3 guy, it's really difficult. They demand a lot, but then when we actually put them through a test of like, okay, let's see what you can do, your skill set is not even where they need to be.
This is true. I agree with you on that part of it, but there are still that's a huge gap, right? So how do you solve that? Like, that's my thing. Like, unfortunately for this segment, I'm going to keep going back to, you got to go find a trusted third party, because that's the only answer. Like, we are it, in my opinion, Andre. Like, I don't see it any differently. Our companies, fractional type companies that you can go to, that you can turn to, that aren't going to require you to have a full-time employee, fully burdened. You can tap into their team, their resources. Why aren't we seeing small businesses change to this? Instead, they seem to be, let's just float a job out there on Indeed and see if we can fill it. If we can't fill it, it is what it is.
Don't know, man. And plus the threat, if you're the IT director for a business and now you bring in an MSP, they're going to think, the MSP is going to want to try to get that person and say, hey, we can take this salary away and we can do everything. So I think there's a trust factor as well on that side too.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how these organizations, number one, I don't know how they get away with it. Like, how are you passing these? I mean, I would imagine that a bunch of these companies have some kind of compliance requirements around what they're doing. How are you passing it with such a small staff, or such a not well thought out cybersecurity program, in the sense that you don't have the right team members in place to actually execute on it?
Yeah.
These are all questions that go through my head when I read this stuff and see this stuff. And I just wonder how businesses are handling and dealing with the challenge. I mean, you and I both know that they're kind of not, but at the same time, it's like, I don't see this getting any better anytime soon. And the answers are right in front of us. Right. So this is why people got to share this show, because like, business owners have a massive problem that they want to figure out, but it's kind of like one of those things. If you don't know how to figure it out, it's like, oh, I don't feel like dealing with that. I'm just going to go, figure out a different problem to deal with in my business. Right. And businesses need to start facing this stuff head on, because it's going to get ugly here. Right. I think this week could have been ugly for a lot of businesses if certain things played out geopolitically, but they didn't. And those days are coming, folks. Those days are coming when your business is going to get hit because of what your government does. So, any thoughts on that, Andre? Or are you going to not touch that one?
No, I mean, yeah. If what was going to happen happened, there was going to be a lot of threats made as far as our internet, right? The cable lines that run under the sea, and also there was a lot of threats about our power grid. So things that none of us here in the show could fix necessarily, but they are in our systems. These other countries are in our systems, and it's just easier for them to come in if there's no protections and nobody's watching. Nobody's watching the systems.
And if you're not aware, I mean, when our president threatened to go after Iran's power grid, they came back and basically said, okay, go ahead, we're going to hack you. And that's essentially the threat that they threw at him. And I find it very interesting. You may think it's because of financial market manipulation reasons. I find it interesting how they backed off so quickly once that was revealed, because I don't think our government really knows how deep some of these countries are into some of our infrastructure. And that's reality.
Yeah.
So if I say that, then they also don't know how deep they are in your business, and you don't know how deep they are in your business. So everybody's kind of flying blind here, is the moral of the story, including your government. As we can see, because like I was torn, Andre, before the show, whether I was going to talk about this or I was going to talk about all the municipal governments and cities that are dealing with ransomware attacks, right? Because that's more evidence of what I'm talking about, is like your municipal governments, your local governments, even your federal government, they just don't tell you about it. They can't stop these guys. Nobody can. So, all right, my man. We're going to move right along here. Let me get the right one up. There we go. Love it.
All
This is a
right.
very interesting one that you decided to bring to the table, and one that we kind of cover and touch on from time to time. And this is your backup situation, and I think we're starting to see. Man, I wish we could go back in time. We could probably have AI go back and analyze our shows and kind of say when's the first time these guys started talking about like your backups, and you gotta pay attention to them and how important they are and things like that. And here we are with just more and more data coming out saying, hey, we think we're good. It's kind of the same thing, right? That assumption that I talked about at the top of the show. Everybody's out there assuming. We could talk about all the reasons why IT professionals like to assume so much. And we can get into that as part of this discussion, Andre. But there's some more data here saying like, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that everybody, if you're in IT, that you'll get an alert telling you if your backup was successful, and you'll get an alert if it failed. And unfortunately, even just going back to your last slide where or your last article where you talked about not having enough people, but this is something that is very true in our industry where backups are not tested until they actually need it. And when I say tested, I don't mean just going in a portal and seeing that, okay, the API integration works, Microsoft 365 check mark, third party check mark. We're talking about taking a file, hitting the restore button, let's just say a Word document, and then after that, restoring from that Word document and making sure that it opens. Because a lot of times what can happen is you think you're protected, you think you're backed up, and then you assumed, and now for whatever reason, there's an error message, and then you call that third party company, and they say, oh, sorry, nothing we can do, and so forth like that. So there's a few reasons for this. First thing is there's no accountability in our industry. Again, just going back to that same thing, is like when something happens, that's when the client finds out you haven't been doing your job. But most clients don't. I mean, I've never had a client that says, I want to see a report that you are doing your job, in the sense of show me that you have done a restore. Unless you're in compliance, that's a little different. But clients don't know this. They just assume that managed service providers are every week or every month going into their third-party backup and just hitting the restore button. So this has a lot to do with laziness on the IT side. This also has to do with time. There just isn't enough time in the day to actually do all these testings and so forth like that. So I think if you're a business owner, you need to make sure that, just like how you have KPIs in your business for your staff, you need to demand this. Hey, I want to see something measurable. I want to see that you're on schedule at once a month or once a quarter, whatever it is. And then most importantly, too, as we see with these ransomwares, where even if you do have a working backup, clients are then surprised that it's going to take X amount of time to restore the data. And not only restoring the data, but if you have a computer with some type of virus or malware or ransom, you have to put in a new hard drive. You may have to buy new hardware. That takes X amount of days to come in. Then you have to then restore the data. That could be easily a week. And if you got multiple computers and time is money, clients just assume, oh, if something happens, I'll get the data by the end of the day. And that's not always the case. So that's why it's important to communicate with your clients, communicate with your IT vendor, and say, okay, if something happened, how long will it be for us to get our data back? Or, how long are we going to be down? And if that answer that they give you it doesn't work with your schedule and timeline and guarantees that you have with your clients, then you got to come up with a better plan, because it's going to be a little more expensive, but there are ways to restore faster. But you just have to now, pay that price, and most importantly, communicate.
Yeah, this goes back to a lot about our last discussion, right? when I talked about, the IT guy who's responsible for everything. Well, now he's responsible for making sure your backups are working and doing these test restores, right? I would say high 90s would be like when we meet with companies and we talk to their IT person who's responsible for this stuff, high 90s percentage who never tested a restore and can never tell you things like what Andre just went over, right? How long will it take you to restore it? If it does, how successful is it? Do you get 80% of the data back, 100% of the data back? These are things that you should know as part of your restore testing process. And if you don't know these things, you're either not doing them properly or you're not doing them at all. And that's where we see most companies fail, is that they're not doing it at all. And the ones that are, they really don't even know how to do it properly, right? And that's, again, that lends itself to you're expecting some guy who's responsible for setting up laptops and doing tickets to also be responsible for your security. That's like going to your general doctor, right? Your family doctor saying, okay, I want you to perform brain surgery on me. Probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
So thought it was very interesting, So what's some advice you have for businesses who might not be doing this? How can they get started? Do you have any thoughts on because look, if I'm running a big company and I got, I don't know, 75 employees, maybe 5-6 servers, that sounds like a daunting task to start these backup testing procedures that you're mentioning, right? Because we've never done it before. So how can we kind of, I don't know, tiptoe into the water, so to speak, so we can start the process? Or do you just say, hey, no, you just got to jump in and test your whole entire system and see if it restores?
Well, first thing is you got to know where your data is, right? So if we're talking about Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, and so forth like that, because there's also the misconception that Microsoft is backing up my data, which is not necessarily true. It syncs your data, but it's not necessarily backing up. Yes, you can restore to certain days. Maybe with SharePoint, you have X amount of days, 30 days, 60 days, etc. But try restoring your entire library and how painful that would be. And plus, if the backup also has the malware, then that's even, you're going to be out of luck as well. So I think the first thing to answer your question, Brian, is know where your data is. Then from there, the tools exist. Find a tool that will take the data and back it up to a third party. Back in the days, you would just put in, maybe a USB drive or some type of external drive. And follow what they call the 3-2-1, where your data is 3 different places. But once you know where your data is, find a tool that can then send the data off. And then from there, once it's complete, you choose a day. Hey, on Friday, we're going to try to restore the data and see how long that process is. And then from there, put it on the calendar. That's my advice. But don't try this at home. Hire a professional like one of us.
Right. Yes, I agree with you on that. I also like your approach of do a little bit, piecemeal it a little bit in the beginning just to kind of see where you're at. A couple things. Number one, what we have up on the slide there, your backups are probably lying to you. It's probably the person in charge of the backups that's doing the lying. I mean, backups don't lie, just guns don't kill people. And then we have a massive gap here, right? 60% of IT pros think they can recover fast. Only 35% actually can. That's not made up. That's insurance data, right? That's information coming from insurance companies who have to bail these companies out of these situations with money when they get themselves into them. And this is what they're finding, right? So, and again, look at all this data. The insurance requirements are only going to get worse, right? So, when you buy cyber insurance, the questions are only going to get worse. And when's the last time you've done a test restore do you have backups? Are they off-site? Yes. When's the last time you did a full restore? What's the date? That's all going to be on there. And that's all going to be things that they look back to and say, well, you said you were doing this and we found out you weren't. So now we're not paying your claim, right? That's how all of this plays out. Some couple other interesting things that this topic brought out, Andre, was at Bay, the insurance company, just so you know where I'm getting this information from. I'm not making it up. They found that 80% of anybody that backed up to the cloud, 80% of the time they were able to recover from a ransomware attack. That's pretty good, right? So get a cloud-based backup service and you're in pretty good hands. You got an 80% chance of recovery, which is really good compared to what we see out there. Organizations using only on-site or off-site physical storage, not using a cloud service, meaning like somebody's walking out with some kind of media or they're storing it somewhere. They recover about 55% of the time, Andre, not 80%, right? So, there's something to be said for these cloud services that back up your data. If it increases your chance of recovery from manual type processes or manual backup things that people still are doing in 2026, which is insane to me, by 30%. I mean, that's a pretty big jump, right? So if you can't answer these questions, like when's the last time you tested, when's the last time you actually restored, then you're going to find yourself on the losing side of those numbers more than likely, because these are things that you should know. Average business is still down for 24 days after a ransomware attack, Andre. That hasn't changed much. And, the other thing that strikes me is like businesses that flirt around 50, north of 50. I mean, in my experience, Andre, they usually have some level of compliance, whether it be HIPAA, GLBA safeguards or FTC safeguards or PCI DSS if you accept credit cards. I mean, how many businesses do you know that get past 20 employees and don't accept credit cards or wire or ACH transfers in some way?
Right.
As soon as you have cyber insurance, as soon as you have these things in your business, you have compliance, and all of them require you to have a backup system better than what Andre and I are describing as the norm here, right? So this is crazy, to me, that we're highlighting these numbers and in this way, and it's this prevalent in, going into, the middle of 2026 here, Andre.
Yeah.
So just to kind of add to what you say, if you're a big company and you have no idea how to start this process, just go have a meeting with your IT guy, your IT company, and say, hey, we have that one system over there. It doesn't really mean anything to anybody. Can you restore that for us and let us and get that set up in a way where if we lost that system, I want to see what it looks like if you restore that, right? Because you and I know, Andre, there's a lot of different ways you could get that system back up and say it's back up, right? You can, insert if you have cloud services, certain ones allow you to spin those things up in the cloud, right? And that's one way that you could say like, hey, it's, log into it, it's available, you can use it, right? But more than likely you're going to want to be able to restore that back to a system that's in that office or in that local network, right? That would be a true test of what you can do, because it's great if you can spin it up in the cloud, but can you get it back onto a system in the office so Sally can come into work on Monday and do her job?
Right.
And that's what you need to do. Just test one irrelevant system, so to speak, and see if your IT team can get it back up and running, right? Tell them to restore it to a new piece of hardware so they can't fool you or trick you. We've seen it all. Like I've seen it all. We're like, oh yeah, they told us they could do that, but they lied. They're like, oh yeah, this is restored. No, it wasn't. It's just the same system. They told you they could restore it, but they were either so busy or didn't know what they were doing that they lied to you. And that happens all the time. Like I wish people understood how much people lie to save their job, to save their account, because they're afraid if you hear the right answer or the correct answer, it's going to put them in jeopardy of making it look like they're not doing their job or they're not doing it. When at the end of the day, this is a company responsibility. If any company blames a person, an IT person, for these failures, that is a shame in my opinion. Like business owners have to be better there and have to understand that this is a company responsibility, and you have to facilitate all of this for the people that are working for you. Do you see it any other way?
I'm paying my IT guy to do this, and it's still my fault?
Yep.
Wow. Guess the buck truly stops with me, right?
Well, that's how it should be in my book, but other people might subscribe to a different book. But at the
Well,
end
I'll
of
still
the day,
sue you at the end. How about that?
what's that?
I'll still sue you at the end after that.
All right.
Your contract says you're backing up or something like that. But also one thing I also see that we've talked about in the podcast is the backup. For whatever reason, a username and password of the third-party cloud backup is on an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, and then the bad guys get a hold of it, and then they go in and delete the backups and then ask for the ransomware. So just make sure wherever you're storing it, you have 2FA turned on and things like that.
Yeah, it's all important, right? You got to protect those offsite backups like they're gold, because it can make a difference. It can make a massive difference in what it costs you to recover from these events. So good stuff, Andre. Way to bring this stuff to the forefront. Make sure businesses understand that it's not all peaches and cream out there. You gotta investigate. You gotta keep digging. You gotta keep checking. You gotta make sure you can't just rest your whole entire company's ability to get back from a ransomware event or some other adverse event. It doesn't have to be just ransomware. You can get hit with a fire, a flood, hurricane, right? All those things could take down your business the same way ransomware does. You have to be prepared for this stuff. You have to understand. You have to ask the questions, and you have to ask for the evidence that all of this stuff is getting done. We come on this show week after week, and we provide you with story after story of where this goes wrong and how it goes wrong. So at the end of the day, Andre's right. The buck stops with me. And if you're the owner of a company, your cybersecurity, your ransomware event, it stops with you, right? Because when the event happens and the ransomware attackers want their money, they're going to want to talk to the CEO. And the CEO is going to be the one making the decisions, not the IT guy who wasn't doing backups correctly.
Right.
Right.
That's actually very interesting. Going back to your accountant, right? If they reconciled, let's just say February 2026, you still look at it to then say, hey, you know what, this seems off, or, you still compare from last month or last year and things like that. You just don't trust what report they give you, and then that's it. So even if you don't understand every increment of QuickBooks or whatever system you're using, but you still verify it. But I think with IT, I think maybe because it's just that more complex, that customers are just like, I wrote the check, don't tell me nothing about it. I just trust that you're doing everything for me. And it should not be that way.
Yep. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Andre, the thread that ran through both stories today is don't assume, right?
No.
Businesses are not failing because they don't care about security or they don't think it's a problem. They're failing because they believe they're more protected than they actually are, right? And so we talked about 61% of businesses out there have no dedicated security staff, but most of them believe somebody's handling it. They just don't know who or the exact responsibilities that need to be done. So they think they're doing it, right? If you don't have the full picture, if you have a blind spot and you only know of 30% of the things that actually need to be done, and there's this whole other 70% that needs to be done, you're going to think you're good until you realize you're not, right? So, and then 61% of IT pros believe they can recover from a disaster fast, but only 35% actually can. The gap between belief and reality is where the attackers live, folks, and they are thriving off of that gap. So the move is to close that gap deliberately through the right partnerships with the security expertise and knowledge who can give you, through like rigorous scheduled testing, a rigorous cybersecurity program that will lead to you being able to successfully recover your systems. So you can no longer trust assumptions. You got to test them. You got to make sure that they work. So if today's episode hit you at all, hit close to home, maybe you're an IT person and you very much realize that this is the world that you're living in, share this show with your CEO, share it with somebody in your company who can make a decision and give them the awareness that they need, where it's not coming from you, it's coming from guys like us, third parties who have no skin in the game. Like, we're not going to make money off your company. We're just getting the word out there, spreading the word so people start doing the right stuff. And hey, maybe you won't need Andre and I one day. That would be great. But we'll go sell lots of AI. We don't need to sell cybersecurity, but when we see companies getting hit left and right, and we know we can help. For 25 years, I've yet to experience a cyber attack. Come get me. I've said it a million times. Come get me. If you like, people used to say, "Oh, what are you doing? Don't go get Andre." But people used to say to me all the time, Andre, like, aren't you afraid of saying this stuff and provoking? No, like, I'm not, because I have all the protections in place. They are going to move on to an easier target. They're not going to keep coming after me because they're going to keep running into brick walls, right? So I see you out there hitting my Microsoft 365 every day. Trust me, you ain't getting it. So if you're getting value from the show, you know the deal. Please share it out. Hit that subscribe button and let your friends and family know this is a worthwhile podcast. If you listen to us on a podcast, leave a review, rate us 5 stars. We really appreciate it. And one last thing you can do, as Andre mentioned at the top of the show, if you want to support us directly, there's a link in the description for buymeacoffee.com/securitysquawk. Every little bit helps. It helps us avoid needing to bring on show sponsors and things like that, so we can kick it real with you every week right here on Security Squawk. So for Andre and I, we'll bring back Randy next week. Stay safe out there. Take care.